So this is going to be the webinar for our month-end procedures. Plus, we've added a little bonus of 1099 reporting. I will start with the 1099 reporting. So if anybody here is here specifically for that and that alone, they can listen to that. And of course, they are welcome to stay on the call, but they can always drop off if that's, again, the purpose for why they're on our webinar today. And then we will go through the month-end procedures, which would then culminate in our year-end procedures that we have here in Workamajig. So what I'm going to do, just so you know, is I'll be talking about a topic, and when I get into a stopping point, a good place to stop, then I can read the questions that you guys are able to post into that Q&A, since I guess chat is disabled. So please feel free to type a quick question in there if you have a question about that. If the question is really more involved or requires more of a back and forth, I might refer you to email, your training@workamajig.com to set up a call specifically with your account manager. Or of course, you can always email support@workamajig.com to talk to your to email your account manager that specific question. So I'll do my best to answer any questions that, you guys that might pop up on this webinar. But again, if it becomes involved or requires kind of a back and forth, then I'll really encourage you to set up that time with your account manager to have your questions answered more thoroughly. So to get started here, again, the first thing I'm going to talk about is our 1099 reporting. The first thing that you need to do, and it's a pretty simple setup. The first thing you need to do for your 1099 reporting is, of course, to set up your vendor as a 1099. So to do that, you can pull up any vendor you have. I bet you guys can't guess which one I'm going to select. When you pull up your vendor record, and you would go into your purchasing defaults, into your payment options right here. And we have the options right here to pick the 1099 form and the 1099 box, right? So with the forms, we have the 3, and the NEC is the more common of the one. And then of course the box, the 01. That's really all you have to do for the setup, right? Is once you have that set up on your vendor, of course, save that information. Then you would go about entering in vendor invoices, just like you would every day, and paying those vendor invoices just like you typically would. And keep in mind that in Workamajig, of course, the 1099 information when we print the report is all based off the payment that is sent to the vendor, right? So it's not based off the vendor invoice amount, it's based off the payment amount that you put in there. So we'll come back and we'll look at a payment together, but once you have that setup information in there, you've put in your vendor invoices and you have your payments applied to those vendor invoices, the 1099 report is going to be here under your purchasing reports. We have our 1099 form, and then you can, run whatever form you're looking to run. It's going to run for last year. Our minimum amount is 600, right? These are the basic settings. You can run it for one specific vendor, or of course you can run this for all your vendors. Now, just in case you're wondering if we have any supporting documentation on this, we absolutely do. I'm going to jump out really quick and go into our help guide, where we have a whole entire thing about your 1099 and your 1096 setup and printing. So it will walk through just like what I talked about, setting up that vendor with that information, and of course, printing this report. But back to the report. So you'll see when I click here, I can generate this to a PDF/email. I can do an Excel document, and I can also do text. Text is going to become more important in just a minute, but let's just take a look at what it looks like when I do PDF. Now, I only have one 1099 vendor in my demo site here, but here is the form. It doesn't look very exciting in Workamajig, but it is designed each and every year. We make any changes or modifications to it that are necessary based on what the IRS is putting out. So the standard form that the IRS puts out for your 1099, we make sure our data matches up with that 1099 form. So you would be able to print this information onto the 1099 form that you can purchase from Staples or any one of the other places that you would generally purchase that from. So this is, again, the 1099 form. No other setup that I had to do, except for, of course, I just set up my vendor record as I normally would, but included the 1099, the box, the form in the box, right? And so that's where it's pulling this information up. And this is coming from the payment that I put into the system for that vendor. Okay, so back to when we go back into our vendor here, I'm going to pull back up my vendor. And the reason why I'm pulling up the vendor is I'm just taking that shortcut to go into the payment. I just wanted to show you guys that, again, here's the payment that I created to pay to the vendor, and it's always going to include the entire amount of the payment in the 1099, since it's a 1099 vendor, unless you opt to choose and to exclude any portion of that from the 1099. I don't have any really good scenarios off the top of my head of why there would be a portion of that excluded. I know there's reasons, and I'm just, I can't come up with one right here on the spot, but you can come in here and say, well, I want to exclude $200, from the 1099. So if I go back and I print my 1099 report, $1,675 would be on the 1099 and $200 would be excluded from the 1099 report that you would be sending that to the IRS. Okay, so you can exclude from 1099 even after a payment is posted. The posting of the, of this and the excluding from 1099, they're not exclusive to each other. So that exclude from 1099 will always be available to you on that payment. Okay, so that's, how you can, again, reduce the amount that would be showing on your 1099. Now, a lot of questions that we get, unfortunately, I can't demonstrate this to you because, of course, I'm not filing anything with the IRS. But we do have, when you go to print that 1099 report, right? We did have, when we looked on here, so we can generate it to a text, right? Once you generate it to a text, you'll have a transmitter control code, contact name, contact telephone number. That is all required. And then you can fill out whatever, again, you need to fill out here, but you can also create a test file. So when you create this test file, it is allowing you to create a test file that would be then sent to the IRS, and the IRS can give you a yay or nay on whether that file was formatted correctly and had the correct information. And if so, then you would be able to deselect test file and then send it to the IRS as your full file. So it's a big question that we get, do I have to print out 1099s individually? No, you can do this text option, generate the text file and submit that to the IRS. Now we do, on our help guide, we do have a whole entire section on the electronic filing where it will walk you through, again, with the information on what needs to be filled out and how to do that information there. So again, just know that that information is available for you when filing your 1099. So I'm going to take a look to see what a couple of questions are here, because honestly, that is the whole scope of the 1099 that I can give you in Workamajig. So let's just see. Somebody had a question. It has been updated for 2022. We will need to just update our help guide to do that. We always make sure that our 1099 updates have been done by December of the year prior, so that we make sure that it's ready for rollout in the January update. And okay, so someone was nice enough to give me an example of why you would exclude information from 1099, and I very, very much appreciate that. Prior to changing a vendor to 1099 included in the 1099 total, correct, they will be. So again, the 1099 report is pretty simple. It just pretty much says, oh, this is a 1099 vendor, so I'm going to include it in the report. So if you have a vendor that you had some payments that were made to them before they were 1099, and then they were made 1099, again, then you would have to probably go back to those previous payments and then just exclude the amounts from 1099. So hopefully that's not a lot of payments that you have to do that with, but you would have to let the system know that those amounts are excluded from the 1099 if they change their status at some point in time in the middle of that year. So I'm going to move off the topic of 1099. Oh, wait, another question popped up. So where does the IRS transmitter control code come from? I'm pretty sure that's from the IRS. I don't know the answer to that. We do have in our help guide up here, I think we do have a link. Sorry for the scroll, but you can go here to get the instructions, and it should give you that information, or at least give you a link to that information from there. hopefully that will help you. And I'll have our help guide administrator update that information too in the help guide based on that. I do not know what you do if you send your 1099 information to a CPA firm and then they send the 1099s. You would most likely have to give your CPA access to Workamajig to be able to print out the 1099s. Okay, that because I'm not 100% sure on how. I mean, you can give them the forms and they can send the form, but if you're doing a text file, I mean, I think it just creates a text file that you can email to your CPA. But unfortunately, if you're wanting your CPA to review the text file, it's not really a format that's easily readable by an everyday user, right? It's designed to go into, you know, the IRS software. So, we don't, when you're asking how do you generate a 1099 report by separate GL, are you talking about like GL company? Because if you're talking about GL company, then I don't have that set up on my test site. So I would, if you had GL companies, I think there would be a GL company field to be able to print for different GL companies. I don't have GL company set up, so I do not have that field available on my test site. Okay, so yeah, you would have should have a GL company field that would allow you to print out those different forms, like a typical financial report would have. All right. Okay, so that is our 1099 setup and printing. Again, if there was something that I didn't answer or I didn't answer to, you know, as much as you would have liked me to, please don't hesitate to email into support@workamajig.com or set up some time with your account manager to get some further questions on that one. Some of them I'm just limited on what I'm able to answer because I don't know the IRS side of things, but I do know, you know, what we can do in Workamajig. All right, so now what we're going to focus on, we're going to move on to our next topic, which is going to be our month-end procedures. And I happen to have that help guide article pulled up also. So we do have a help guide article, month-end procedures. I'm going to walk through each and every one of these with you. I am going to try to stick mostly to the order that this is in. When we get down to the reporting portion of it, I might jump around just a little bit, but I am going to walk through each one of these procedures with you, right? So we might go bump back and forth just a little bit, but where this is all going to start is we're going to go to our Workamajig here, our accounting and our today accounting page, right? So here on our today accounting page, I'm waiting for mine to catch up. There it goes. So on our today accounting page, we're pretty much going to just kind of run down this left panel just a little bit. You'll notice again that we, you know, our month-end procedures, we kind of follow some steps, but when we get to the reporting portion of it, we go out a little out of order on that one. So the first thing I'm just going to point out is, I mean, most of you that are in here are probably very familiar with the today accounting page, but I just wanted you to be aware of some shortcuts if you weren't, or if you're new to this, is, you know, you do have here under more, where you can have a shortcut to your select invoices to pay, that you can print checks. We're going to change the GL close date. That's going to come in into this process in just a moment. And of course, you can modify any display options or system settings that are in here. And let's not forget the plus sign, where if we need to create a new transaction, like a journal entry or a vendor invoice, or what we're going to do today in account reconciliation, we can do that, you know, from the plus sign right here. But first things first, with our month-end procedures, is we're going to look at our unapproved transactions, right? So unapproved transactions are going to be transactions that post to the general ledger, but aren't actually at the level that can post yet. So unapproved is, you know, just more of a terminology. It will include client invoices or vendor invoices that have not been sent for approval, as you can see here, or it will include, I'll get this out. It will include ones that have been sent for approval, of course, that haven't been approved yet. And it'll also include any payments that don't have a check number, right? So even though we don't really call that approved, you can't post a payment without a check number, right? So it can't show up in the posting screen. It has no check number or ACH number or reference number, whichever number you want to call it. So it will show up here in your unapproved transactions. Right. So what you would need to do here is, again, this is this is just listing those transactions. So again, I can click in to my transactions and drill down into them. And if I do have the ability to approve, most people in accounting would, you can approve that transaction, right? I mean, so you were able to go through and take a look at these and go through and approve them. So that's our number one thing in our month-end procedures, is the fact that, well, you know, if it's month-end, you shouldn't have anything unapproved for the previous month. Now, again, don't kind of ignore some of my dates on here. I needed to make sure I had transactions in here for us to play with, so I should have backdated some of them if I were thinking of that clearly. But so, you know, number one thing on our month-end procedures, which we can cross off, boop, boop, we did our unapproved transactions, right? So we approved all transactions that were capable and able to be approved by us for that month. Now, keep in mind, I didn't show this, but you can do a date range in there. So if you did have a bunch of information from January, but you were only concerned with December and before, you know, the previous year or the previous month, then of course, you know, you can do a date range and make sure that you're just approving the transactions that are ready to be approved. Same thing, now we're going to move down to our next one, which is our unposted transactions. So here's, of course, all the transactions that have been approved, that have an approval process, or are ready to be posted to the general ledger, right? Now, one of the things that we need to keep in mind here is that just because today is January 10th, and I post these I click post and I post these transactions, they are not posting to the general ledger as of January 10th. They are posting to the general ledger as of the date that is listed here, right? So if I post them today, this one is going to post to the general ledger as of 12/1. If I post today, this one's going in as 11/15, right? And then of course, if I post this one, it'll be posting in January 6th, right? So just keep that in mind, that the post will, of course, post it today, but backdate it to whatever date has the posting date is. Now, one of the things, again, this screen does have a start and end date. So if we want to ignore that January, because we're just doing last month, right? We're doing month end. We're doing month end for December. Then we can ignore this one, and we can do a start and an end date, and we can make sure that we leave that one out. Or you can just not select it. But we also have some printing up here. So again, not your typical print where it's just going to print the grid. We can click on print, and we can do a pre-posting by account or a pre-posting by transaction report. So these are really nice because right here, you're just seeing them at the level of, hey, we're going to post a client invoice. Well, when I post that client invoice, I don't know what accounts it's going to hit. Maybe that's important to me. So I can do a pre-posting by account, and before I hit post on there, then I can double check that what account, each and every account that is going to be affected when I click on post, right? So again, my total will still be the $7,400 like you saw on the first screen, but this is, again, 2,000 of that is going to go to this account, 2,000 is going to go to this account, and so on down the line, right? So that one's really nice to look at. And then of course, the pre-posting by transaction, this is just where it's going to summarize that transaction for me. And it's going to say, oh, when that journal entry posts, it's going to hit these accounts. And when these client invoices post, it's going to hit this account. And it's going to sum it up for you by the different transactions on that show up on there. So again, two very useful reports to see when before you click on post, because the one thing that you can of course do from this screen is you can select everything. And again, I don't have to select that vendor invoice if I don't want to, but I can select everything, and I'm going to click on post. Now, when I click on post, just a word of warning to everyone, it's going to post to the general ledger. I do not have a mass unpost, right? So I might, if I post everything, that's why it's important to run those reports, is I can't go and unpost everything like I did. I would have to individually go and find those transactions and unpost them. So I always like to give that little word of warning. So you can click on post, and it's going to go through and it's going to post each and every one of the ones, except for the one I did not select. Okay, so then of course we did item number 2 on our month-end procedures, right? So here's item number 2. And then we have item number 3, which is posting WIP and running the WIP analysis report. Now, not every agency posts work in progress, right? So if you do not post work in progress, as our instructions say, then you will skip this step, right? If you do post work in progress, then you're going to click into here. You're going to make your posting date again, you know, your month end, and then you would select your transactions through, of course, that month end, and then you would be, you know, put in your comment and you would post work in progress. Now you can print a pre-posting report. Hopefully I have something to post. I think I did. I tried to do this on purpose. And it will tell you, of course, what's about to post to work in progress, right? Now, before I post work in progress, which I will come back and do that in just a moment, when it tells you to post work in progress, which is right here, and it also tells you to run your WIP analysis report. You would run your WIP analysis report, of course, after you post work in progress, but I wanted to show you a couple of things about the WIP analysis report before I post work in progress, because I'll lose my information if I do. When I run my WIP analysis report, again, you can run it as of the month before, and then you would, you know, generate that report. I just wanted to show you that on this first screen right here. So this is before I post work in progress. It will tell you the amounts that are ready to post to work in progress, right? So it's telling you how much you have in unposted labor and how much you have in unposted expense right here. And then once you post work in progress, you would be able to look at your project details, which I promise we will do in just a moment. And then you would be able to, again, see how it breaks down project by what's posted into work in progress. And if any of you are wondering, why would I want to post work in progress? It is a way for you to normalize your financials. So it is a way for you to take any of your unbilled, let's say labor, and create an accrued revenue on your P&L, so that you're normalizing again your cost and your revenue in the same period. And again, if you want a lot more details about work in progress, please don't hesitate to look at our help guide on it, or of course set up a call with your account manager so they can wax poetic about work in progress and how all of that works for normalizing your financial reporting. So I'm just going to go back in again, and I'm just going to do those steps that we talked about just a moment ago, which right. And I'm going to post work in progress, and it posts my December work in progress, and it posts this information into WIP. All right. Now, when I go back and I run my WIP analysis reports, and again, I would generally run my WIP analysis report as of any other financial report for that same time period that I ran my work in progress for, right? I would go to my project details and I would be able to see it appear in my project details. So I would be able to see project by project how much work in progress is associated with that project. Okay, so that is our step 3 in our month-end procedures, but I see that I have a question, so give me 1 second. Can we add adjustment entries to the closed period year? No. Once you've closed a year, like and I'm going to talk about that kind of towards the end, a GL close date, right? Once you've done that, you are preventing any posting or unposting for that time period, right? So that previous accounting period. Of course, if you're an admin or have super rights, you can undo that GL close and make an adjustment, or you would just have to make the adjustment in the current period, right? It really just depends. And that's why, again, you know, the year month end and year end does not always happen right away, right? It might happen a couple of weeks. Some people tell me months, but we'll give it a couple weeks, right, after the end of that period, so that you can have all of that information roll in and make sure that you make those adjustments or entries into the current period. But once you close it, it does not allow any further posting into that period. Okay. So then step number 4 on our month-end procedures is where we get into the reporting, and where I'm going to go a teeny bit out of order, just because I'm going to run our AP and our AR aging first. And why am I going to do that? Simply because they're up here, right? So I've done all of these other transactions. So then I can go, this right here shows me right at a glance that my AR and my AP are in balance, right? So that's why it shows me they're balanced, says it, shows me as of today, they are balanced. If I want to run my AR aging, which I do because it's part of our month-end procedures, I can click right there on our AR balanced. Now my system is thinking, there we go. We would run it, of course, as of our December 31st, right? So that's an as of date. We would always run it for posted transactions only, right? Because we are going to use this report to compare to our balance sheet to make sure that what invoices we have in Workamajig are matching what our balance sheet shows for our AR account, right? So we're going to generate this, and we can generate it on screen. We can generate it to PDF, and there we go. There is our AR aging as of December 31st, right? We can print that out, export it to CSV, save it somewhere, whatever you need to do. And then we are going to, by the way, you can also run that. I did it for client invoices, which are my unpaid invoices. We also can allow you, have you run it for unapplied advanced bills. I can probably tell you I didn't set one up, so we're going to get no data, so I won't run it for that one. But that will allow you to see, again, you'll want to run it for unapplied advanced bills if you use advanced billing, because that's going to allow you to see what unapplied advanced bills you have, so you can compare that to your deferred revenue account again on your balance sheet. So you can run it for these two different options and save that information there. Same thing you're going to do with your AP. I'm trying to remember if I have an unpaid AP. I don't know if I do. We're going to find out in just a second. Oh, I do. There we go. So you can run it again, your AP aging, same concept, right? You're going to run this, you're going to save this, you're going to keep tabs on your amount open, because you're going to compare that on our next step, which is when we scroll down to our accounting financial reports, and we're going to run our balance sheet. Again, for that same time period, we're going to run our balance sheet for that 12/31 because we're closing that month end. It just so happens that, of course, this is also going to work for our year end, right? So I can run this. And again, then what I would generally do is I'd compare this to my my AR aging report. Ding, it matched, right? I would match this one to my AP aging report as of 12/31. Yay, they matched, right? So that is, the goal of running the balance sheet, and of course those two reports, and tying your reports together, is you're going to check your accounts receivable, you're going to check your accounts payable, and again, if you had that deferred revenue, that advanced bill accrual account, whatever account you want to call it, we would also be able to compare that one to that AR aging report. Okay, so here's those two reports. There's our balance sheet. Oh, one more thing I should probably mention, probably while I was in there, for any of you that are new to our balance sheet or new to Workamajig, is anytime you see on our report here that these numbers are underlined, you can click into it and get a drill down of the amount of what's making up that amount, right? So what's making up my $2,000? For me, it's that journal entry, right, that I had in Workamajig. So just keep that in mind, that when you run the reports on screen and you see that underline, that it's interactive, and you can drill down and take a look to get more detail on that. All right, so back to our month-end procedures. We ran our balance sheet, we did these two. Now we want to run our corporate P&L. Right, so same area here, here's our corporate P&L. Now we have lots and lots and lots of other client profit loss, project profit loss reports, but of course the corporate P&L is your income statement. So this is again going to be a part of your month end and your year end procedures. If you do run GL companies, which I don't, you would be able to run it for your different GL companies, all together as a whole, however you want to do that. But you would be able to, again, run your P&L, put in your date range. I don't have a lot of data in here, so I'm just going to put my date range of all. But you would run it again for that time period, and then you would be able to see all of your information here, and everything goes here also, where you can drill down and look at the information in here. You'll notice again, I posted WIP. I have some WIP revenue, right? I have some WIP expenses. So, this is where WIP affects not only your corporate P&L, but it will affect your balance sheet, right? You're putting information into your financials when posting work in progress. So this is our corporate P&L. There are many different ways to run your corporate P&L. You can do a comparative, you can do a 1-year monthly. We also have financial budgets where you can compare to a financial budget, and all sorts of other options over here that would work for you. So just keep that in mind, that you do have a lot of different options when running your corporate P&L. Okay. So our next step after we've run all our reportings, I will tell you, we do have a step in here that I'm not going to do today, just because I don't have any accrued orders. But you would run your accrued order detail report, and you would run it to your balance sheet again and your current liability account for your media pre-bill accrual or whatever account you use for that. So an accrued order detail report would be if you pre-bill orders on your client invoices. So I have a media order or I have a purchase order, and instead of waiting for the vendor invoice, I bill the order, right? When you do that, Workamajig will create an accrued expense. And of course, it will have this accrued order detail report that you can also match to your balance sheet. Also, it's a really good idea, of course, to keep an eye on your accrued order detail report to make sure that you're not, that there aren't any outstanding vendor invoices that you're waiting for, or maybe a vendor invoice was put in and it wasn't applied to that accrued order, right? So I don't have that example in my demo today, but just keep in mind that if you do that, then you will want to run your accrued order detail report, and you'll have an account to look that over on your balance sheet. Then, here we're going to get to number 9, which we're going to create and finalize our month's account reconciliation. So we're going to then go back into our accounting screen, haven't left it yet. We're going to click on the plus sign. We're going to do our account reconciliation here, and we're going to reconcile our bank account, right? Let's see, our checking account. It already defaults to last month for me. I don't remember what my statement balance was. I'm not going to lie. I think it was like, yeah, I don't remember. So I think it was like 1850 or something like that, but it's going to probably be off. But you should, of course, know your statement balance a little better than I do. But you would be putting in, of course, your starting balance is based off, again, the starting balance of from the previous month, right? It will use the ending balance and use your starting balance from there. You put in the statement balance based on the statement from your bank. And then when you hit save, hopefully I have data in here. So then it will show you your increases and it will show you your decreases, right? And so then you would be able to select your increases and your decreases. I was way off on mine, right? And then what if, this should again be comparing to your bank statement, right? So what's in Workamajig should match what is on your bank statement. You would be able to match those up. And of course, if they match, you would finalize this. Obviously, I didn't do a very good job with my statement balance, but you would be able to finalize and kind of lock down those transactions, right? So once you finalize, those transactions will not be able to be modified, like the amounts in Workamajig or anything like that. We also keep an eye on your book and ledger balance. Those two things should match, right? So that what your book says, right, what your bank statement says matches the ledger in Workamajig, right? So we would then finalize our account reconciliation here. Okay. And then, by the way, any open account rec, since I didn't finish mine because I didn't do a very good job with my statement balance, I can go in and leave it open and I can work on it because maybe I don't have all the information just yet. Maybe I'm selecting some items. Most people's bank accounts has more than 3 items in them. So, it might take a little bit more time to reconcile than what mine did. Okay. Then last but not least is where we are going to set that closing date, right? So once we set the closing date, this goes back to that previous question. As it stands right now, my period is still open, right? I can still go in and add transactions. I can, unpost transactions. I can post transactions. I can, do anything like that with those transactions. But when you are done and everything, if you've run all your financial reports and you've settled everything and you've put everything in, then it's time to set that GL close date so nobody goes back and makes any changes, right? Nobody likes a surprise if they rerun their financial reports. So that's where you can go under more and you can go to change GL close date and you would put in the GL close date. Okay. Now, one thing that's a little bit different here in the GL close date, and we're just following proper accounting standards, right, is that our GL close date is a to date and not a through date, right? So to date means that we're closing everything up to that date, right? Through date means we're closing everything up to and including that date. So when you put in your GL close date, you would put in your GL close date of January 1st. Right? That means that everything prior to January 1st is now closed. I cannot unpost it. I can't post anything. I can't modify the transactions that are in there because of course I can't unpost them. Now there are certain things on transactions that are able to be modified. For instance, again, like if you have to put in a description or a note or something like that, a lot of times we allow you to make those small modifications, but anything for like posting dates, amounts would not allow you to be changed. Now, again, if you're an admin in Workamajig, then you do have the ability to come in and of course remove that date if it needs to be removed, right? You know, like if you were like, oh, I realized I wasn't done. I have some more things that I need to do. But we do track that so that, you know, people would be able to see again if it was undone and then redone, right? Or something like that. So for me, just because again, like, you know, we use this for a demonstration, I'm going to remove that GL close date, but that's your final step. That's your lockdown of that prior period. Now, some people will do a GL close date every month. Some do it every quarter. Some do it for the year, right? Saying, hey, you know what, I've closed out 2022. Nothing needs to change from 2022. You know, I filed all our paperwork, you know, to the IRS or something like that. Nobody better be making any changes. So they might do it just for the year, right? And of course, there's always the option to never set a GL close date if that is the way that you want to go. So last but not least on our month-end procedures, because even so this completes the month-end procedure, you can see that, but we have a really short blurb about our year-end process. And you'll notice it says there's nothing you need to do. Pretty much now you might be thinking in your head, oh, there's so much I need to do, but Workamajig wise, there's really nothing extra that you need to do for your year-end procedures, right? Like your year-end process followed, you just did it, right? I mean, you printed out your financial reports, you know, set your GL close date, you finished your last account reconciliation, all of those items were done, and now the year is closed. Workamajig does have in system setup, for anyone that doesn't know, and I can show you, we do have a first day of your fiscal year. So Workamajig will then automatically calculate the difference between your sales accounts and expense accounts, zero the accounts, and place the differences in your retained earnings for you. So it does all of that for you based on that fiscal setting that you have in your system setup. So there's really nothing that you need to do differently for year-end process versus your month-end process. And so if you're wondering again where that's at, that's the only thing not in my Today accounting page. That's going to be in your system setup under your GL settings, your GL tracking options, and then we have where the first month of your fiscal year would be set by default. With every system, it comes in January. Of course, you're able to make the change to that, but that's how our system will will figure out what your year end is versus just a typical month end reporting. So that's it. That's the month end / year end process. I will leave it open for any other, questions that you guys want to put into that Q&A if you have any questions or concerns. And like I said, if this was, if you said, oh, this was nice and it gave me a general idea, but I have a lot of different questions, I want to dive deeper into that report, I want to learn more about work in progress or accrued, the accrued order detail report or anything like that, please don't hesitate to email support@workamajig.com to ask your account manager, or you can email training@workamajig.com. And those are our schedulers, and they're the ones who are the keepers of our calendar and will get you onto our calendar so we can have a Zoom meeting, right? And discuss with you any of the more details that you would like to get out of that. Because again, I touched on things, everybody has a specific scenario or something that they would probably need to discuss, and so we're definitely open to doing that. So any questions or concerns, I'm going to give it a couple of minutes and then I will say goodbye and have a great day, and it was a pleasure doing this webinar for you. All right, so one of the questions is best practice to track cutoff of vendor invoices once a period is closed, since we cannot use invoice date, which is dated in a closed period. Well, one of the things I always tell people, I'm a big fan, just so you know, of purchase orders, right? So that you can look not necessarily pre-billing them, but just putting in purchase orders so that you're always aware of vendor invoices that you're waiting on, right? So if you have a bunch of open orders, you know that you have some vendor invoices and in the wings, and like you would be out there somewhere waiting to come in. So I don't know if there's that's to me the best way to track. I have all these open orders and I don't have any vendor invoices applied to them, so I do know that I have some vendor invoices. I don't know if you start making phone calls or if you what you do, but you just know that you have these intended vendor invoice to come in. Other than that, like once a period is closed, unfortunately, if that vendor invoice comes in and you've closed that period, then the vendor invoice is just going to have to be entered in the current period. Now you can put an invoice date of a prior period, but the posting date would have to be in the current period. So that could be a little bit confusing when you say, oh, I have a vendor invoice dated December 31st, but my posting date is, January 10th. So I don't know of a better way to do that when except for, again, keeping a track of any of those open purchase orders. No, especially if they're a certain age, the purchase order was out there 30 days ago or something like that, we should be receiving a vendor invoice at any time. All right. Hopefully that helped just a little bit. Sorry, I have a scroll. Someone's asking, how do you get a recording of this? I think it's just automatically sent to you. We do, there's always a little bit of dead time ahead, and we have to do a little bit of editing before we send it out. But I think I want every attendee, a registered attendee on this webinar, will receive the recording. If not, let's just say you don't get it. It will be in our help guide, probably in the next few days. We try to do a quick turnaround, and our help guide has, all you have to do is type in webinar and it will be in our help guide. Okay, so someone with the GL pre-posting report. Sure, absolutely. So I don't have much on there now, but not a problem. So that was when I went to my accounting and I went to the Today Accounting. It's thinking, sorry. Now it's thinking really hard. So it's going to be in that unposted transactions area. So when you go to unposted transactions and you go to print, you have a pre-posting by account or a pre-posting by transaction report. And they always just live in here for now. Okay, let's take a look. All right, I'm going to leave it open for just another minute. It looks like some people are dropping off. Maybe it's lunchtime, maybe it's snack time, not sure. So I'm going to leave it open for just another minute. Any questions, anything like that, like again, and if I do miss you or I did not answer your question, please don't hesitate to email support@workamajig.com and ask that question again. All right, you guys. Well, thank you very much for attending today's webinar. It was a pleasure talking to you. And again, please don't hesitate to reach out with any questions or concerns. Thank you.